Hello, I'm Rob, and today I'd like to present to you people an addition for a bench grinder to sharpen or to grind even new screwdrivers. Normally it's a bit of a problem to get both sides of the screwdriver equally ground or sharpened. Many times they are not equal. And with this device you can do it exactly equal on both sides. And I'd like to show that to you people today. We start with one side first and bring it to the machine. Take a little test grind and see what it does. We flip it over and we grind the other side. Well, I hope you can see it well. Well, because we have on both sides of the machine we have a grinding stone, we're going to use now for finishing the fine stone. We place the block again in the rail, and because the rail is crossing also the fine stone, we can do it equally well. And as you see, we get a pretty fine finish. It's still not done. Well, this is then the groove side. And this is then the fine side. When we did one side, we flip it over and we do the other side. We'll get there. Well, as you see, it's a pretty fine finish. Well, in the end, if you are satisfied with the result of the angles, the size of the screwdriver, we have to grind it in size. That will say the thickness of the blade. And that we can do, of course, if we keep the screwdriver square to the stone. By doing like this. Test it on a screw and it's ready. The end of the grinding process. Now I hope you can see it well. Well, this is the whole device. It's the grinder itself, a guide rail, a guide block and a base plate. Well, as you see, this is then the grinding block. It's to clamp in your screwdriver, and it's with a variety of holes through and through. So you have two equal blocks and you fit them together, and then in the center you drill those variable holes. In this case it starts with 2.5 mil until 9, but you can do it with any size, whatever you want or whatever you need. Well, the first thing what you need is of course the base plate. And in this case there are already some bolts in, but you start with a bare plate. What is in a way very handy is if it's an exact squared piece of wood. And I leave 10-14 centimeters from the mounting holes on 3 sides. The back side is not that important because there is nothing happening. And then the first thing what I do is you place the machine on top of the wood and determine the first hole. In this case, in my case, it was this one. And then if you place the machine, you think, well, that's a nice position. You place already 1 bolt, so then you can mount it already a bit. Well, as soon as you mounted it on one side of the plate, the machine, with a pilot bolt, you have to determine the center of your drive shaft, your motor shaft, on both sides of the machine. It's not always centered, but that's important because the housing is many times a bit groove casted, and those mounting holes, they don't correspond exactly with the center of the shaft. So if you should keep this one steady, it can be that your shaft is a bit in an angle. It deviates a little bit from the rest of the plate. So what we use, what is very important is that we use the center of the shaft, and that we're going to determine now. And I'll show you how. Well, we take a few blocks of wood and we try to build it up so that we get a bit in the vicinity of the center of the shaft. You can eyeball that, that's not really a problem. And then we start the machine. Wait until he runs full power. We take a piercer or anything else. Place the piercer or the nail or whatever you have a bit towards the center of the drive shaft and engrave a little dot or a circle, anyway as close as you can to the middle. And it will engrave itself because the shaft is turning. So, when you determined the center of the shaft, you do that on both sides of the machine. To determine the center is of course very important because that's where we accurately measure all the sizes from. Not from the housing, but from the center of the shaft. Well, we fixed the center of the shaft, the drive shaft, motor shaft. Now we take a square angle, put the square angle in the center of the hole of the shaft. You can eyeball that if you sit straight for the machine. Place it in the middle of the shaft and give a marker on the underside of your plate, on the base plate, here. Well, the next thing what we do is we have the marker on the base plate, and now we're going to see the distance from the marker to the front of the base plate, because that's important to line out the other side of the machine. So you take the size from the marker, note it or remember it, and we're going to use this marker, this size, for the other side of the machine. Okay, now we're going to copy the side from the marker, what we just did, to the front of the plate. We're going to bring it back and copy it on the other side of the plate and give it a mark. So now we have 2 marks lined up with the front of the plate. Okay, we have now the 2 marker points on the base plate and we connect them with a straight line. Okay, what do we have to do next is now we bring the square angle to the line what we just drew on the base plate and line out a bit more towards or forwards the machine so that the center Our square angle falls in the middle of the drive shaft. And if we have done that, if that's okay, we can start with taking out the mounting holes for the rest of the machine. And then the drive shaft will be equal, parallel with the front of your base plate. That's important. Well, the next thing what you have to do is to place the guide rail. It needs to be placed. So I did it in a way close to the machine, close as I can, so that it didn't touch the stone on both sides. Then you see, you take the size from this side and from that side so that it's parallel with the front of the base plate. You can see in the slots where it ends up, and where it ends up in the beginning of the slot you can give it a marker, drill the hole and put the bolts through and a few nuts on it, and you are in business. Well, if you think the guide rail is in the right position, what you can eyeball a bit with the stone and the screwdriver, if you have already a screwdriver. You can see if it really touches the stone equally. If it does, take it away, tie up your block, the screwdriver in the block, so that it won't change. Well, if you think this is the straight angle for your screwdriver and the mounting block, you tie it up. You can do that with the two bolts in the front. And they have to be flush, because once you did one side you have to flip it over and use it for the other side. Well, place it on the machine, check the grinding angle again, if it's in the right angle, mount and tie up your guide rail, tie up your block and screwdriver, and you're set to go. We start with one side first and bring it to the machine. Take a little test grind and see what it does. We flip it over and we grind the other side. I'm pretty pleased with the result. Well, because we have on both sides of the machine we have a grinding stone, we're going to use now for finishing the fine stone. We place the block again in the rail, and because the rail is crossing also the fine stone, we can do it equally well. And this is then the fine side. So, when we did one side, we flip it over and we do the other side. We'll get there. Well, as you see, it's a pretty fine finish. Well, in the end, if you are satisfied with the result of the angles, the size of the screwdriver, we have to grind it in size. That will say the thickness of the blade. And that we can do, of course, if we keep the screwdriver square to the stone. by doing like this. Test it on a screw, and it's ready. The end of the grinding process. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video and that it's clear enough for you people to duplicate. And I want to thank you for watching, and maybe till the next time. Bye bye.